I mean, do we want a Christian Taliban running this country, or do we want a corrupt real estate executive running this country, an oligarch? Pence has spent his life shilling on behalf of the oligarchs. Trump is an oligarch. Which is worse? I can build a case in either direction, but the propensity of Trump to not pay attention to details like, the mental state of Kim Jong-un, when he just, when he bumbles into stuff, I just have this bull in a china shop sense about Trump that scares the heck out of me. And that's the basis of my concern that if Bob Mueller finds anything, whether it has to do with Russia or whether it has to do with oligarchs, American, Russian, Ukrainian, God only knows, odds are fairly high, in my personal opinion, just from the stuff that I've been reading in the press, that the Trump organization has, at the very least, been involved in money laundering operations, perhaps unwittingly, but unlikely. But, who knows? But if Mueller can find something that can be the basis for an impeachment action in the House of Representatives and a trial in the Senate, and we end up with President Pence, or Trump resigns, which is what I've been predicting. I've been predicting for some time now that before the end of this year, or the middle of next year at the very latest, that there will be indictments of Manafort and Flynn and probably Don Jr. and maybe Corey Lewandowski and maybe a few of the other people close to Trump. And when those indictments happen, Trump will pardon them all, and then he will resign to avoid being attacked himself. And then Mike Pence will come in and be president. And the first thing he'll do, just like Jerry Ford did with Richard Nixon, is pardon Donald Trump. And that'll be the end of that, and we'll never hear anything more about it. That's my prediction. But if that plays out, is that good for the country or bad for the country? I was kind of gleeful is too strong, way too strong. But I was at least somewhat relieved at the incompetence of Donald Trump initially. Now I'm terrified by it.
Hey, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the powers of the president as far as pardoning people goes.
Mm-hmm.
First off is, he cannot pardon somebody for an impeachable offense, so it limits his ability to pardon himself.
Oh, no, wait a minute. That's not true. He can't pardon someone in the context of an impeachment. He can absolutely pardon somebody for an impeachable offense and head off impeachment. But if there's an impeachment process involved, if Congress is considering articles of impeachment, or if there is an impeachment process going on, then he can't step in. So just to be precise in our language here, Randall.
And I would like to find out, because I respect your opinion, is doesn't somebody have to be guilty before they're pardoned?
No. Actually, that's an interesting thing about the whole pardon process. Both Jerry Ford and George Bush Sr. pardoned numerous people in the Nixon and Reagan administrations, respectively, who had never been convicted of crimes. In some cases, had not even been indicted for crimes. It's just that it was fairly obvious the direction the investigations were going. So, there's a long history of Republican presidents pardoning people within the administration of the previous president, to avoid their being prosecuted for crimes.
Well, good. I'm glad. I had a lot of questions about that, and I want to thank you for clearing some of that up. I hope it answers questions for some of your other visitors. I also have one other just point of interest is, do you know that Donald Trump, from what I understand, owns a condominium complex in Las Vegas, got the big Trump name on it, yet he could not get a gaming license for the property?
Right, because he couldn't, I understand it was because he couldn't pass some sort of a morality test in Vegas, although it may have had to do with his bankruptcies. I don't think he actually owns that property. I think he's licensing his name to it, but I could be completely wrong. And that's the property where they tried to unionize and they fought that. It's that is something that's really worth noting.
Oh, well, Rex Tillerson must be ordering antacids by the boatload by now.
Why is that?
With all this that you were talking about.
Oh, with North Korea. Yeah, as the Secretary of State. You're absolutely right. Yep.
Well, I think really that Pence is more dangerous because of his connection to Betsy Voss. They are of the same mind, and the Prince family, and Blackwater.
Yeah.
And Eric was, they was talking, I think it was in the Washington Post this morning, about his belief that these wars should be fought by mercenaries.
Right, his mercenaries specifically. Yes.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And that's kind of scary, too.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. When you privatize war, you create incentives for war, and we should never, ever create incentives for war, as Dwight Eisenhower pointed out in January of 1961.
That is definitely a tough choice between Trump and Pence. I really think it's time to address more of the potential constitutional crisis with the failed balance of powers.
How so?
Specifically with declaring war.
Well, that's been going on
from Congress.
That's been going on since the 50s.
And I think it's time to really talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought we were going to have a conversation about it after Vietnam, and another war that was literally never declared. We have not declared a war since World War II.
I'm younger than you. I thought it would happen with Clinton, with the actions that happened in '98.
Yeah, in Bosnia and Serbia.
Yes, not just Bosnia, Serbia, also Afghanistan and Africa.
Oh yeah, yeah. And the first Gulf War, under Bush, the elder.
Well, none of these go through Congress.
Or if they do in ways that are largely cosmetic. Authorization to use military force. Excuse me, how is that not a declaration of war? And declaration of war has a much higher threshold. But yeah, I think that's so. What is that?
Representatives are on the line for that.
No, I get that.
I can go to my congressman and say, "Hey, we should not be doing this," and we get a chance every 2 years to make sure that the outcome of that doesn't put us in a perpetual war.
Right, but then pretty much the only people you're voting for are Barbara Lee and Bernie Sanders. I mean, there are not a lot of members of Congress who are willing to stand up to the Pentagon. Excuse me. I completely agree with you on Congress needs to be declaring wars. I get all that. So then the question becomes, what does that have to do with who's worse for America, Trump or Pence? Because both of them, in my opinion, will exploit foreign wars for their own political advantage.
They will, but if they have to put it through Congress, it's not a knee-jerk reaction.
I see. So you're calling for the checks and balances to be restored. I get it, and I totally agree. I don't think it's going to happen, but I totally agree. John, excellent point.